Hi there, I'm Brissa Cabe, the Digital Learning Specialist here at LCMS. Welcome to our App Chat for Educators podcast, where we'll explore different apps, instructional strategies, and other digital resources for education. Thanks for tuning in. This week, I'm here with Jacob Reep and Lisa Edrington, two of our awesome teachers here at LCMS. Lisa, Jacob, please tell us a little bit about yourselves and your roles here on campus.
My name is Lisa Edrington. I've been teaching for 26 years. This is my fourth year with LCP District. I love teaching science because every day in science is new. It's a discovery, and it's fun watching the kids explore and learn.
And I'm Jacob Reep. I've been teaching 13 years, sixth grade. Most of my experience comes from elementary. And it's my passion. I absolutely love getting kids excited about science and what's going on and show them how much it really does have to do with their everyday lives.
I love that, and it's so evident that both of you are really passionate not only about your content but also about working with middle school aged kids. I know that this year you two have worked really hard to make your science classrooms not only instructive but also fun and engaging for all of your students. I've had the pleasure of watching and even being a part of some of the labs that your sixth grade scientists have conducted, including investigations of elements and compounds and demonstrations of plate tectonics. But a couple weeks ago, your classes conducted a different sort of a field lab, you might call it, one that took place somewhere that sixth graders normally might have a hard time exploring: outer space. Would you tell us a little bit about what you used in your classes to make this possible and what your students did?
We were able to use virtual reality. We wrote a grant, me and a previous teammate at Central Elementary wrote a grant for VR headsets as well as iPod Nanos, and we were able to bring that into the middle school setting. Myself and Miss Edrington were able to essentially take the kids to outer space. They were able to experience it in a view that many of them have never done before, in a fully immersive way that just, it almost felt like they could reach out and touch it. From the International Space Station to constellations to even the different rays that are given off throughout the universe, they were able to experience that almost firsthand.
And one of the neat things is we incorporated the virtual reality goggles. So they were reaching out and touching, and in our science classroom, the chairs actually moved 360 degrees. So the kids were able to spin. We kept them seated for safety, but they could spin and truly get that full virtual feeling. Then we incorporated the technology of Nearpod and had them do an exploration of Mars virtually as well. And Mars actually had a VR component in the Nearpod. The Nearpod had that virtual component. So they, for some of the students who, with VR, they can get a little bit dizzy or a little bit sick to their stomach feeling, we were able to incorporate the same kind of technology in just a different way. And the students really had a great time learning, walked out saying how much they loved lab, but I think they also had a better understanding of what scientists may feel or astronauts may feel when they're having to navigate in kind of a different type of environment.
So it was definitely fun watching those kids, because I was in here for all of your classes during those processes, and it was a lot of fun just seeing the wonder and the excitement that they were experiencing. Listeners, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with it, virtual and augmented reality are two different ways that someone can use technology to immerse themselves in a new setting or even interact with objects and concepts in the physical world that might otherwise be out of reach. So when you were both planning out your solar system unit, why did you both decide that VR might be the way to go for this lab?
While we were brainstorming and talking about some different augmented reality apps that are available and some experiences, it just kind of instantly took me back to, well, we've done this in elementary, and it just so happened that Brissa was able to basically unlock this for us to give us the ability to use equipment that was technically Central's and bring it to the middle school. And it just shows how well the partnership works in our district and how our DLSs really are involved in our classrooms. But through this experience and us collaborating together, it just gave us the ability to just unlock something that we had never used before in this setting, to give the kids a different experience than they had ever had.
And not to be too technical, but as our TEKs have us use models to demonstrate things. It's very different seeing a model of the earth or a model of the moon or a model of the solar system versus actually walking among the different parts of the solar system and reaching out and touching stars or reaching out and seeing how far away something may or may not be. In self-service with our district, we have a couple of apps where they could actually put those on their iPads, but then to actually take it that step further of being, like you said, immersed in the learning as well, really helped them be engaged.
And something that I really just want to say that I appreciate is that y'all didn't use the technology just for the sake of using it. It wasn't something to check off your list, oh, I've used technology for this lesson. You knew that it would support your standards and really supplement your curriculum and make the lesson meaningful for your kids. So you kind of already touched on it, but if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit more, how do you think this process and the way that you both used it really impacted that learning process for your students?
I think it's evident in already looking at the data. The data from the unit test has come back and it's one of the highest we've had. Even to the point of when we look at ours, our data here at LCMS was actually considerably higher than the district's. And I think that's has a lot to go with the experience they received. I mean, when a kid leaves a classroom with a smile on their face and they're telling you that this is the funnest day I've had in my entire school career, you know you've made an impact. You know you've done what you were supposed to do, because learning should be fun. It shouldn't be strenuous. It should be something that you want to be involved in. And this unit really did that. The ability to use the VR the way we did made the kids want to know more, and they made them want to be a part of something that was so cool and so different.
I think, piggyback off of what Jacob said, is I've had students come back since that lab. And, in science, part of our curriculum is lab. And labs can be in very many different forms. The VR just happened to be our lab. But to have kids come back weeks after that lab and say, oh my goodness, this was great. I got to get really excited, but now I've researched this and I found this. Hey, did you see that? I'm really excited about this. And they're still to this day showing different things. We've had a good debate about Pluto, but for them to understand that seeing how far out in the Kuiper Belt it actually is. And those are things we can talk about. Those are things we can look at on the screen. But for them to actually experience it, I think it made that meaningful learning, and it also stuck with them. Mm-hmm. So that retention, like Jacob said, really did coordinate with their ability to demonstrate their knowledge on a test.
And talk about transforming the learning environment as well, like almost literally, because the kids were, as we said, immersed in this. And it's really awesome to hear that you both have students who are coming back and saying this was one of the most fun experiences I've had in a classroom this year, in my entire school career, and I'm more interested in looking further into things that I took from that day. So on that note, can you think of other ways that if Central were to, share with us again?
Please.
You think of other ways you and your students could maybe make use of these in science?
I think there's a plethora of different units and different topics that you could integrate VR and AR. I know our district is always pushing the envelope with technology. That's something we put a lot of incentive in. And we have a lot of people that are willing to help you try to find the right places. But everything from being able to look at a cell in a three-dimensional view, looking at pieces or parts of matter, force and motion, being able to break these different units that are sometimes very difficult to fathom, to be able to bring it in a more immersive situation. And I keep going back to that word, but that's what it is. You meet them where they're at. They're 21st century learners. They're kids that are immersed in technology. They know how to use it and they're eager for it. And this gives them something different, something new, but something that is right in their wheelhouse. And it just makes it even much more attainable and special for especially hard to reach units, hard to reach topics.
Absolutely.
I think those tangible things like center of the earth, or what the earth is made of, or even looking back at some of the things with ecosystems. Lubbock doesn't really have a lot of water ecosystems, so to virtually travel to the beach or virtually get to go to an area such as Greenland, where we talk about, plate tectonics and how our poor guy was up in Greenland doing some studying and got, caught in the Greenland storms. all of that just makes it more real for the students. And I think what was even more exciting is seeing not only you, but Mrs. McReynolds, our principal, and Mrs. Williams, our curriculum director over at Central Office. All of them came in the room, all of them put on goggles, all of them were reaching and touching and trying to be a part of the lesson. And students saw that as, well, that really is meaningful as well, to see the adults in my life giving merit to this. And so the students not only got to enjoy it for themselves, but also saw that it, as Jacob said, has meaning in their lives down the road. And I got so excited because NASA, at the end of this unit, just announced we're going back to the moon and announced the crew. And so the kids are now looking ahead at what can we, when is this going to go? When are they going to the moon? And for 6th grade, we kind of start that learning as they travel through 7th and 8th grade, because they have an 8th grade star in science. And this just gets them started in that journey towards their success on that.
So one thing else that I want to make sure I ask, and I want to pick your brains a little bit. Not everyone might have access to VR goggles or the iPod set that you got through the grant, but we do have these really cool tools called iPads. And as we've already kind of mentioned, there's a lot of apps that we have in self-service that kids can use for science and other content areas. But I want to pick your brains a little bit. How do you think teachers of other content areas, history, math, RLA, even electives, could make use of virtual or augmented reality?
I think there's a ton of great sites, and I think some of it obviously is a little bit of teacher homework and you know, finding the apps on your own that are not already in self-service. And then getting with DLS, getting with writing in help tickets to see if we can have those added to the self-service site. And there's, I mean, amazing things on Google Arts and Culture, that they can take virtual reality field trips to all kinds of different museums all over the world. And so from a historical standpoint, getting into there's even parts of math that they talk about, the different angles that were taken in some of the different exhibits at the Arts and Culture. There's just a phenomenal amount of resources that are available, and even more that are available that we just have to find, and we have to bring in, we have to institute, and just, you know, kind of follow that chain of from an idea to making it reality.
Well, and we did that too. We looked and found on YouTube a virtual 360 part of the VR goggle that we used in science as well. But I think you can look at going back into replaying historical reenactments and more. You could be a part of that without just reading about it, but actually trampsing up the hill or going and signing treaties. You could look at some of the things within drama and all the different historical times of Shakespeare, and actually maybe do some sort of virtual reality where you're part of The Taming of the Shrew or some sort of Romeo and Juliet balcony scene, but also be a part of that virtually. I think with math, there's so much with the different types of geometric shapes that you could use, and actually be creating a virtual augmented reality of a three-dimensional object. I think with RLA, finding a character and being immersed in a character, I go back to, it'll age me, but you know, The Never-Ending Story, that movie actually pulled the character in, and when you shut the book, the whole adventure stopped. And so bringing the augmented reality to me, or virtual reality, brings that character into a storybook or into space or into whatever it is you want to be a part of. When you're a part of something, you're more engaged to continue with it. If you're just on the outskirts reading, or you're just on the outskirts trying to figure out a lab, students are more easily distracted. And so I think if they're a part of it, they have a better buy-in to it.
And to repeat something that both of you alluded to, it's about making that content come to life and really making those kids find the relevance and find the connections by being part of that environment. And so I really appreciate this fantastic conversation that we've had with each other today. Is there anything else you want to share before we start wrapping up our time?
I just want to say, and I know you're too humble to say it, but we could not have done this without you. You brought in not only the ability for us to borrow the technology, but you made sure the technology was up to date. You made sure old dogs like me could use the technology and that it was possible. You also gave up 2 days to be with us to make sure everything went well in each and every class. So we want to say thank you to you and how much we appreciate the job that you're doing and the coordination between the different schools. It does show that our district cares about all of us in terms of our learning.
Absolutely, and it was honestly my pleasure. Like I said, I had so much fun being a part of this process and just seeing all the wonder and excitement and learning that was going on, and I learned a few things about the solar system too, so.
And I want to ditto that. I mean, you are amazing. What you've brought to the table has been amazing. It's been a great experience getting to work with you and kind of your ability and your want to help us be successful. And I say things like this are what you get your kids to buy in. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If you can get a kid to buy in, then you can get them to learn it. And I think things like this are what you do in order to do that.
And I think it all starts with the teacher having that idea and being willing to do something a little bit different to get those kids engaged in those new and exciting ways. So thank you again so much, Jacob and Lisa, for joining us for this conversation today. I loved getting to hear your thoughts on using technology to transform your learning environment. Teachers, as STAR comes and goes and the year starts to slow down, consider giving virtual or augmented reality a try to expose your students to history, math, science, reading, and more in new and exciting ways. There are so many apps and tools that our iPads have to make your content come to life. This was our final episode for the 2022-2023 school year. It was so much fun and such a privilege to get to discuss digital learning around our campus with so many amazing educators, and I'm so excited for season 2 next year. Listeners, thank you for tuning in each episode. I hope you found something that piqued your interest or sparked your imagination for making digital learning meaningful. Until next time.